This video is part 2 of creating collage papers with soap bubbles with a completely different technique and end product that I think you're going to love. And make sure you stay to the end to see the result of my mad bubble experimenting. Hello, my name is Catherine Rains. I'm a mixed media collage artist, and welcome to Tune In Tuesday, where I share weekly art demos to expand your mixed media toolbox. If you see value in my videos, I would deeply appreciate a thumbs up, and if you would subscribe to my channel below. Links for all the supplies to make these papers are down below under More, and you might also want to check out my free 5-day online workshop, Collage Kickstart, where I show you how to use all the collage papers taught during Tune In Tuesday to make fabulous collages the very first try. So let's get into creating collage papers with soap bubbles, part 2. This is my second video on making collage papers with bubbles, and this is a very different video than the first. I'm going to use a very different technique, and it was actually inspired by an Instagram artist who I'm going to link in the show notes down below. I'll also have the first bubble video linked as well, so you can see the difference between the papers made with this technique versus the one I did the first time. Now, the materials for this are very similar to what I did before. You need suds, so I've just got Dawn dishwashing liquid, but this time I am also going to experiment with pre-mixed bubbles that children use to blow bubbles with, and this is actually a really easy way of doing it. As usual, I'm going to use 2 primaries plus a white. I'm also going to use a gold. This is phthalo blue green shade, Hansa yellow light, and just a titanium white. I'm also going to play with golden fluid acrylic, iridescent gold. I got some small paintbrushes with small little heads on them. I've got a spatula, a straw, some cups for mixing my suds up with, and then I've also got a palette already set up, and I'll show you how to actually create these little paints with the acrylic paint. These are just petri dishes that I added the paint and the water to. In terms of what papers work for this technique, drawing paper, 80 pound, works really well. I don't think a lesser weight would work as well. Mixed media paper, this is 108 pounds. Anything heavier would also work. I also used a watercolor paper, 140 pound, 300 pound would work great. However, I also used some lighter weight papers like copy paper, and that was a complete fail. So you need a little bit of a heavier paper to make this technique work. I'm going to start with a petri dish. You can use any kind of dish to mix your paints in. And I'm going to take my phthalo blue, add just a tiny bit to it. And this is so easy. All I'm going to do is take a little bit of water, and I'm just going to water it down. Now, by the way, I could also use acrylic inks for this. I could use fluid acrylic ink. I could use just acrylic inks. I could use watercolors. Anything that has a very liquidy substance to it. So when I mix this around, it's pretty watery. That's what you want. So now I'm going to add this to my palette. So I've got a nice array of different colors here. And as I use them, I will actually stir these up because they've actually been separating because they've been sitting out a little bit. These two probably need a little more water. I know that these are very liquefied, so you need something that's pretty runny. If you use Dawn, and really you can use any kind of dish soap full strength, I'm just going to pour a bit in. You don't need much. So you can see I don't have much in there. Then I'm going to add some water to this. Maybe equal parts water to the suds, and that's it. So I'll show you what we're going to do with that in a minute. Now, for the children's blow bubble thing, this is the easiest thing ever. All you do is you pour it in. You do nothing else, and you're ready to go. So I'll show you the difference between both of these. So let's start with the children's bubbles, which is really the easiest version of this. So I'm going to take a straw with a pretty small hole right there. To me, works better. The larger the hole, the more air you have to blow through it to make the bubbles. So I'm going to put this aside. I'll pull out a piece of paper. This is a piece of mixed media paper, and I'm going to blow. Now I can use my straw and just drip these right onto the paper just like this. And while they're like really robust right here. I'm going to take a paintbrush and dip it in one of these really watery things here, and I'm going to lightly put it on top. And you can see it starting to go into the little bubble creases, and that will float down into and onto the actual paper. And you can see some honeycombs beginning to form there. And the bubbles are starting to pop. So while that's popping, I'm going to get a little bit darker color. Get a little darker color over here, just to get some variety, and I'm getting some really pretty honeycombs. But with the children's bubbles, they stay popped, or they stay full a long time. So I have a lot of opportunity to add some paint to the bubbles. Now, I think that is really very cool. Now, the previous way that I've done this in the previous bubble video is I actually mixed the paint in here, and that for me tends to be a little harder. So let's see if we can do some layering here. I'm gonna blow some more bubbles. The children's bubbles just makes the most gorgeous bubbles here, which I love. And so let's try doing a darker color, because this is gonna be collage paper, where I'm gonna be using these in a single collage, although I'll cut them up in different pieces. But the cool part about this process is that I can layer this. So when these bubbles are popped, I can actually put another set of bubbles in another portion here and layer one on top of the other. Okay, I think that's good. The more paint I put on here, the more it's gonna fill in like that. And that's an okay look too. So I'm gonna put this aside. Let me just put that right there. Let's try another piece of paper. This is a watercolor paper. This is 140-pound watercolor. And just for kicks, let me do the same thing with the dish soap. So again, I'm going to, this is water and dish soap together. Now again, I can push them off with my straw like this. I can also use a spatula to do the same thing. Now these will not stay as long, at least not in my experience. Let's do a little bit of a green on here. These pop a little easier, but I'm still getting a nice effect there. I like that. Yes, it's really actually incredibly fun to do, because you don't know exactly how this is going to work, because the bubbles are in control of the process. So I'm going to use my liquid dish soap again. This time I'm going to take a spatula. Actually, a spatula didn't work as well that time. Ooh, they popped right away. Okay, let me just rub them off there. There you go. That worked better. Let's see what a gold would look like. Now, with the dish soap, it pops a lot easier. The bubbles tend to be bigger. So it's a very different look than if I use the children's bubbles. And to be honest, I like the children's bubbles better. Now, there are a lot of small bubbles in here, so I'm going to give it a chance. Add a little more. This is the dish soap again with water. Make a lot of bubbles there, layered on top. And let me put a darker color on this. I need to be probably working faster than I am, but I'm trying to keep the paint separate. So here's a dark color. So I'll have a little blue layered on top here. Wow, really interesting. Okay, let's go back to this one. Again, this is mixed media paper, and I'm pretty attached to using the children's bubbles. That is my new preference. Bubbles super fast, and they last quite a long time. And I really want to try some gold on here. See how gold layering on top of that paper will look. And you can't tell when you're doing it exactly what this is going to look like, because the bubbles will pop with the gold on it and create a lovely design. Now, obviously, the less paint I put on here, the less honeycomb I'm going to get. I don't need to keep going, really. I'm kind of just playing it by ear. I'm looking at the design that's being created underneath. I'm kind of aiming for putting the bubbles right in the creases of the bubble. Let me see if I put it on the top. Yeah, if I put it on the top of the bubble, it actually pops the bubble. So you need to put it in the kind of crease in where the bubbles intersect. That's what makes the magic here. Okay, I'm gonna stop and let that pop. And already I'm like completely crazy about this. But this one's pretty cool too. It's got a really cool abstract design. Just to be pure about this, this is the dish soap. This is children's soap. This is dish soap. You layer some more right there. Makes huge bubbles. Let me put some darker teal on this and see what happens. These pop quicker. There must be something in the children's bubbles to make them last longer, since the dish soap really isn't intended to use this way. It's still giving me some beautiful honeycombs though, with a nice layered effect. Oh yeah, I'm just gonna keep adding until I have no more places where I can add. And that is pretty stunning. Let me try it. Oh gosh, I just love this. And as you know, when I say the words, I love this, that means I've got something really good. For me, that means I like the design. I think I'm gonna try maybe a really light blue right there. There you go. And this is the children's bubbles again. So we'll try real light blue. See what kind of layering we can get. I just love watching the honeycomb design being created underneath of this. And I loved the bubbles I made in my previous video, so you might want to check that one out. But this one is just as cool, and it's easier actually than the 4 different ones I showed in the other video, which is again linked at the bottom of this video, so you can easily find it. And you just put the paintbrush right in the wherever the bubbles meet is where you're looking to put it. I mean, that is pretty darn fun. I always have people always tell me about the bubbles, that it's so much fun to do with kids. I say, heck, it's really fun to do with adults. And I'm gonna put some more gold here because, you know, once you get started, you have to keep going. Now, one trick with using a straw and some bubbles is that it's really, you have to make sure that you're only blowing out of one end, because it's really easy to pick the straw up and start blowing out of this end. And then you get a mouthful of suds. No good. Unfortunately, I know this from experience, that it's a pretty icky experience to have soap bubbles in your mouth. It takes all the fun out of it. Okay, let's put some more gold over here. There are still bubbles here from the last one I did, which I'd gone here and then back here. It's amazing how long the children's bubbles last compared to just dish soap. So I'm kind of a fan of this. The nice thing about this compared to the one I did in the previous video is I don't need to worry about mixing paint in the right quantities in the dish soap. Okay, let's put this aside while it does its magic. And this is just really beautiful. It's also got some little tiny bubbles that are forming here. And of course, I got to put some more gold on there. This is the dish soap. I got to work quick with the dish soap because those bubbles don't last near as long. So you can experiment with not putting much of this on there. Like I'm putting quite a bit. Like I'm trying to get every single crease while I still have bubbles. But you just get a different effect if you don't add as much paint, obviously. But these bubbles are going down fast. So you got to work a lot quicker than you do with the children's bubbles. And it's amazing. There is still one bubble right there from like 2 rounds ago. Absolutely think that's gorgeous. And there's bubbles there. So I'm trying to think if there's anything else I want to do with that. So I think I'm going to dry both of these, just put them down and try something else. So I'm going to try another one. This is drawing paper. And I'm going to again use my children's bubbles. I'm going to try something different this time. This is walnut ink. It's very watered down. Actually, this is its natural consistency with walnut ink. Let's see if there's anything interesting that can come out of this. I've never tried this before, so we don't know. But it might be really cool to put some gold layering on top of this. Doing collage papers for me is a game of what if, suppose, let's try, how about? Because you never know. I got this huge bubble here, so I would love to get some bubble, and it barely, when it popped, it didn't have much on it. So let's put this over here. This is a piece of watercolor paper. And I'm gonna try alcohol ink. No idea if this is gonna work, but you know, it's liquid. Maybe it will. Oh, the answer is no. So if you're wondering, unless I just didn't do it right, alcohol ink did not work. Although I've got a couple interesting splotches there. So I'm just gonna use that and layer on top of it. We got something going on here. So what color with the red is the question. I think I'm gonna do a blue. Let's see if we get some interesting layering going on. Really love these little teeny bubbles. Don't know what's gonna happen when they all pop, but I like the look of them. So I'm trying not to put too much paint on because that's when the paint kind of runs together. Goodness, this is so pretty. Wow, okay, I'm gonna let that pop on its own. Let's go back to the brown walnut ink. Let me layer some gold on top of that brown. What I love about doing brown and gold kind of papers, these are neutrals. So, you know, it's nice to have papers that are colorful, but you also need things that can kind of set the color off. It kind of frames the color by doing something that's quieter, and neutrals next to a very colorful piece will actually highlight the colorful piece. Or you could just do a whole collage full of neutrals, which is something I do in Collage Joy. We have a whole 2 weeks of how do you make collages with just neutral papers, which people end up falling in love with and want to stay with neutrals, even though they've always been color people. Okay, that's pretty cool. Let that do its magic. Now see, this one is turning into a really cool abstract design. So let's put some more, because why not? The question is what color would go with this? And I'm thinking I'm gonna do just a lighter blue, but I'm gonna put less paint on it this time. It's really hard to stop putting the paint on, by the way, because it's just fun. It's fun to drop the paint on and see what happens underneath. But again, the key is to put it in this intersection of bubbles. You don't want to put it right on the bubble, so I'll show you what happens. If I put it right on the bubble, it pops the bubble. So the magic happens when you put it in the crease where the bubbles intersect. I'm gonna let this dry and I'll bring it back and show you. Now this one, I just want to put another layer on. I wouldn't need to. It's actually done the way it is to me. It's always hard to know when to stop, but I think I'm gonna put a little more green right there. But this is a kind of a light value paper, so I'm gonna stick with light value here. Maybe I'll put some more bubbles in that corner too. Question is what to put on top. I'm thinking this baby blue, or no, maybe the green. Put the green on. Now, a whole nother way of doing this is to take these bubbles and actually add the paint to the bubble itself, which is actually what I did in my first bubble video. It's just a little more tricky. It does work. It works incredibly beautiful to make layered bubble papers, but the formula or the ratio between paint, water, and bubbles can make it a little trickier. So let's leave that one alone. And then I got some here. We'll add a little bit of gold over here. As soon as I add accidentally paint on top of the bubble, that's when it pops. That's good enough right there. This is gonna be a done one, but I'll show you when it's actually popped and dried. Now this one is on drawing paper. I love all these bubbles. I have no idea what's gonna happen with it, but I love this. Question is, do I let it dry some more? Why? No, I think I wanna add some more of this. Get some right there. And this time I think I'm gonna do all blues. Oh no, let's do a teal. Even better. Add a little bit of variety in here. Gonna add a bunch of bubbles in this little cluster of a whole bunch of little stuff and see what happens. I'm gonna put some right there. For some reason, I have this inkling I wanna put something light blue right there. And I may be making a disaster here, but we'll see. And by the way, there are no disasters. It's just that it'll come out different than I might have thought it would. And however it turns out, it's how it's supposed to turn out, right? I don't know, this could end up being my favorite one yet. I love all the things that are overlapping here. So I'm just gonna carefully pick this up, yep, and lay it down to let it pop naturally. Lay a little bit there. And I think I'm gonna add just a little bit of gold. Let's see what I can do with this. Love the gold iridescent there. It's very interesting. I'll put this down. And back to my drawing paper with all the blues. I almost can't resist putting a little gold on this blue. We'll just try it out right there. I'm trying to avoid that. Of course, it ran into it. Okay, this is turning into an abstract painting here. Put this one down. This is watercolor paper. I think I'm gonna add something dark right there. Just give it a little contrast. These bubbles are so easy to work with because they just flow right out of the cup. Dawn soap suds also works well. It's just not as easy and they pop faster. In fact, I'm gonna let all of these dry and I'll show you the end result once they're all popped and dried. This is the watercolor paper and I wanna do some neutrals, some black, some gold. I think it'll be really beautiful. So this is the children's bubbles. And this is actually a high flow. It's a black, watered down a little bit. Probably need a little more water in this. And what I've also learned is that less is more. So I don't want to put so much of this on here because it'll actually saturate too much of the paper. This is already buckling. So I could have actually watered down the paper. It might have worked better, but I think I'm going to stop right there. It's really irresistible to keep going. I'm just going to put some in those little bubbles. So this kind of design is perfect for layering. So I'm going to let this dry just a few minutes, and then I'm going to layer a couple more things on top of here. Actually, I can do gold right now. Some gold kind of overlapping it. Could even put some gold on the bubbles over on the black side. I'm going to let that pop, and I will start with a new one and put it actually right beside it. Let's do the same thing. This is the mixed media paper. Kind of try out both of them at the same time, see what happens. I'm going for the less is more, so I don't saturate the paper quite so much because then I get more blending of the colors underneath as it dries. Oh, that is so pretty, but I think I'm gonna have to stop before I get too much paint on here. One more. Let this dry. And we'll just switch them as this one dries. I already love what's happening there. Put some gold on this one. You can kind of just take your paintbrush and kind of push it right through all the tiny little bubbles, and they won't pop until they're ready to pop, which will be a little bit from now. Okay, less is more. I'm gonna put both of these down to dry. So this one just has kind of a gray black on it, so I think it'd be pretty to put some gold on here. Put this one down to dry. It's already looking really, really gorgeous. I'm gonna put some more gold here. Here's the result of my grand experiment using both Dawn dish soap as well as the children's bubble mix. And for this technique, using the children's bubble mix is actually what I liked the most. I learned so much from this. This is very different than doing the techniques I used in my first bubble video. Using children's bubbles takes a lot longer for them to completely pop and then the paint to settle into the paper. And it gives you a completely different look. It's kind of an abstract, kind of arty look. Not that the other bubbles didn't look phenomenal either. I also learned that only certain kinds of papers work for this. So this is a drawing paper, which I thought was going to be a complete bust. This is 80-pound drawing paper. But in the end, when everything dried, I actually am in love with this. So these were all teeny little bubbles that popped. And I just kept adding different layers of paint and got the most amazing effects out of this. So I'm thinking I will actually try this again, even though in the moment, as it was drying, I didn't like it. Same with this. This is drawing paper. Again, didn't like it as it was drying, but when all the bubbles popped, it was actually quite a cool effect. This is mixed media paper. I think this is very beautiful, just very different. All these little bubbles here all pop. There's interesting textures with all the bubble layers. And when you add gold to it, it just adds a magical texture to it. Love that. So some interesting neutrals to add to collages. My favorite papers for this technique was watercolor paper. The artist that I had learned this from, that I've linked in the show notes below this video, actually used 300-pound water paper. I didn't have that, plus it's more expensive, so I used 140. But I'm over the moon in love with this. The watercolor paper just takes this kind of technique really, really well. I mean, look at this. This is probably like 6 layers. Now, this is warped, but that's no problem because when this gets applied to a collage, it will go completely flat. So it's not the curving of this is not an issue. But gosh, isn't that gorgeous? The colors, you know, the gold on top is just so pretty. I mean, even that, you know, just cut that little piece off for a piece of collage, or that off for a piece of collage. I'm pretty much in love with all of these. This was actually a mistake. I'd actually accidentally poured some red on there. It turned out to be probably one of my favorite papers. I hope that you also enjoy making this different version of bubble papers, and I would love to see what you make with this. Have fun. To learn how to make many more types of collage papers, check out the links that are about to appear right here. And be sure to join my free 5-day online class, Collage Kickstart. The link to sign up is under More below. And if you haven't already signed up for my channel, I would be deeply grateful if you would. And I'll see you back here next week for Tune In Tuesday.